Hi, my name is Grace Hammond, and this is my presentation on sort of what I feel is one of the most important things in sort of a work-life conflict, and then also kind of how we can better not only prepare ourselves for the workforce, but how we can make the workforce better for us. So my focus today is on sort of the conflict between your work life and your hobbies. When I was going through the research, one of the things that became abundantly clear through all the sources I read is that most of the time, more people in general, when asked, would like more time for hobbies. That doesn't just mean like something like reading or whatever. They want more time to be able to like develop a skill for them that isn't tied to their work life. So for instance, learning a new language, or taking up a martial art, or biking, or any of these things that sort of provide enjoyment for them without the sort of idea that you need to commodify it or, make it something that you have to use at work or that sort of thing. So when going through the research, the first article that I focused on was the one by Latif. I believe that's how you pronounce it. And the big focus in their article was on the value of knowing one's value. Oftentimes workers struggle to be able to figure out what they're worth, and that's partially because, if not mostly because, their employers sometimes don't make them feel seen or feel valued as an employee. And one of the big asks in that article was that most employees, when asked, wish that they had better communication with their boss so that they felt more valued in their workspace. This also goes along with feeling valued by, if their boss is valuing them, they're valuing their time, not only at work, but outside of work. That means hopefully trying to not do things like just saying, oh, you have to stay an extra couple hours. I'm sure we've all experienced stuff like that where our bosses have been like, oh, hey, can you stay like 10 extra hours? No big deal, right? That's not valuing our time. So as an employee, that is a big ask. And Latif says that is one of the main reasons that employee dissatisfaction happens, and that if there was better communication and it was better presented to the employee that they were being valued, that would work out better. Sort of along the same lines with that is valuing one's time. It's not valuing or valuing one's time, but also valuing the employee. That being not just an employee who maybe has a family, like for instance, Prakash, excuse me if that's not the correct name, in their article, they pointed out how oftentimes there is a sort of stigma on if you ask for extra time off or if you ask for time in general, the expectation is that there has to be kind of something that has to be the reason you take time off instead of just wanting time off. And that oftentimes a way that people are more prioritized than others is if you have a family, instead of just being a single person, if you're part of a family unit, you are oftentimes not like super prioritized, but you're prioritized over those who don't have families and who are just by themselves. Your time, their time, the ones with families, is seen as more valuable than the ones without families. So this goes back to the idea of communication and knowing one's value. Single workers know their value and they want to be respected for that. So do family workers, and they also need to be respected for that. However, there is a disconnect where it seems like, well, you have the ability to just be by yourself, so you don't really need that time off. Where someone who has a family, maybe it's like, well, that is the reason you need time off. All in all, no matter what, there is a certain amount of like knowing to value your own time, even if it doesn't mean you have to have a family or any other responsibilities. You just want your own time to be able to cultivate hobbies and skills, which is important because oftentimes too, people with families, their other responsibility other than their work is also their family. So they also don't get time to value their own hobbies because they're doing two different things at once. Harari has a similar version of this when their focus in their article was on the idea that better employee satisfaction equals better success. That goes back to being able to communicate with your employees and being able to communicate with your boss. If you are able to communicate what you need to be a happier employee, this is proven in many articles, not just in Harari's article, but there are several here, including the Real World article that I would say the Real World is Vilgas. They wrote a article on how Iceland shortened their work week. And it's actually improved productivity, improved quality, and it's made the employees happier, and that satisfaction is met. So one of the big things about this and all of everything I've been reading is that to really, satisfy employees, you have to listen to them, and that oftentimes listening to them will make your environment and your work better. And you have to understand that, and that is sort of the way of the future. So it's either you can choose to dig your heels in and not listen to your employees, or you can actually listen to them. Denardi also had a similar thing where it actually being able to cultivate hobbies makes it so that you are more productive. You have something to look forward to at the end of the day when you're done with work, or you have something to look forward to is like just as fulfilling for you. It's not just about being productive and a cog in the machine. It's about like feeling a sense of pride and success for yourself with the skill that you are doing, rather than just it's a skill that you had to learn for your job. And then oftentimes this can bleed over into your work for the better. If you have a skill that you've developed on your own, oftentimes you bring a new perspective to what you're doing. And Vilgas pointed out how like this all sort of comes together in the idea that Iceland, they decided to try out the 4-day work week to see how people would appreciate that. And they were able to come up with a really clear understanding that people felt happier, they felt more involved with their community, they felt more involved with themselves, they were able to take up things such as hobbies to be able to like feel satisfaction for themselves, not just as like an employee, but like for themselves as a person who exists. And that oftentimes happier employees mean better success, mean quality products or quality business, and it also means more productivity. So there's nothing to lose here. So really the main thing that all of these articles are talking about is that oftentimes what everybody in these articles, when they asked around what employees want, the things that came up with was more time, more satisfaction, and better communication. And these are all very doable. Employers really just need to step up and like make a decision as to whether or not they want to listen and like actually try and move forward with better ideas and hopefully make a better company or a better brand or business out of it, or they can dig their heels in and have an unhappy workforce. And it doesn't incentivize anybody to stay, it doesn't incentivize anybody to come in. So all in all, time, satisfaction, and communication are really the most key things, especially when all these you need time to do hobbies. You need time, and the hobbies make you satisfied. And really communicating that you need those two things to your boss will get you to the hobby. This isn't to say that there isn't a long way to go. Obviously, better pay raise is something that a lot of people want, especially here in America, but also changing the idea of how we think about business. It's not all just like boom, 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 grindhouse kind of like you have to be on top of it, sort of that sort of thing. It can be listening to your employee and like figuring out what can I do to retain my employees, but to also make sure my company looks good. It's a PR in some of the most simplest senses. So that is my thoughts, and this is my presentation on sort of hobbies versus work life and why it's important and ways we can move forward so that people feel seen and heard and we're allowed to do things even if it is just video games. So that's my idea. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for listening. Goodbye.